G'day folks, Rob here. In today's video, we're out on site doing a consultation for Niki, having a look at her aquaponics system that she's having a few hassles with, and thought I'd bring you along and just show you what we're looking at. So just a bit of a backstory before we have a gander at the system good and proper. Niki contacted me through Facebook. She's had a few issues with the system. Keep in mind here that it is winter in southeast Queensland, Australia, so water temps are fairly low, which is a good thing. And yeah, there's not a lot growing on, as you can probably see in the beds behind us there. Now, Niki's water pump died yesterday, but luckily enough, she has a really good air system, so she's able to keep the fish alive, and they're actually off after I leave to buy a new water pump for the system. So anyway, Niki has had a few issues, and I'll quickly spin the camera around and give you a bit of a look. Now, the water pump aside, you can see that the system is really well aerated at the moment. Loads of air going in there. They think there is approximately 30 fish in this tank here, and probably about another 40 to 50-ish in this tank here. By the way, these tanks, both these tanks are 2,000 litres or that many gallons in volume, and they are conically based, so they have a point underneath them where all the solids will be drawn to, and then they go out via this pipe here to solid lifting outlets that are external to the tank themselves. Both sides have one, and as you can see here, we have an air hole to prevent siphon occurring and yeah, basically draining all this tank here. There is a bit of an algae issue, as you might be able to see in the light there, which is something else we've addressed. So while I gave Niki a couple of suggestions, I thought I'd fill you folks in as well. Now, to begin with, algae can cause a few problems with your system. Number one, it makes it very hard to see the fish if it's the soupy variety. Secondly, it can cause the pH to fluctuate while it's photosynthesizing. Thanks, Rooster. While it's photosynthesizing during the day, it's expelling oxygen, which can bump your pH up. And then at night, it respires, so it's breathing in basically oxygen and releasing CO2, breathing in, if that's the right word, and that can lower your pH. So it can cause fluctuations there, which can stress a few people out, not knowing why their pH is jumping around. Not only that, it's using up oxygen in the tank at night, and there are some folks out there who turn their pumps off at night. And if you've got algae, a lot of algae in the water, and it's using oxygen to breathe, so to speak, it can rob the oxygen from the water, essentially depriving it from your fish as well. So it can be a bit of an issue in that respect. Not only that, it is using other elements to feed itself, so phosphorus and the nitrogen family, so ammonia, nitrite and nitrate. It can cause a bit of a hassle in that respect as well if you're running on very fine nutrient levels. A lot of people like to run at very low nitrate or nitrogen, so yeah, it can cause hassles there. Now, as to how I suggested Niki look after it, shading the tanks, you'll see the sump tank in a little while. Keeping this direct sunlight off the water is the number one way you can limit the growth of algae. And because of the way Niki's tank room is set up, just running a bit of shade cloth over the opening would help a great deal, maybe a little bit of a lid on the tank as well if they felt like going that far. Other ways you can tackle it, barley straw is suggested by some. The exact mechanism isn't known, but it's thought that it releases a little bit of hydrogen peroxide as it breaks down, and that can inhibit the growth of algae. My number one issue with barley straw is it can take some time, and meanwhile you've got this bag of barley straw floating around your tank. Not only that, if the straw gets out, it can play havoc with your pipes. It could block up pipes, causing overflows and other issues like that. Some people will suggest putting algae eaters in there. They don't really look after the suspended algae. They'll do the filamental algae that grows on the side, on the surfaces of things. That's not a big issue. So yeah, if that's the sort of algae you've got, maybe use some of those fish to look after them. Just inquire at your local aquarium as what would be right for your climate. Another thing you can do is darken the water itself, which is something we've done here with this little organic hydroponic system behind me here. I'm using a fish product that also has kelp added, so it keeps the water very dark. And in aquaponics, you can use a straight kelp flake, which is a product that I actually sell. A link in the description down below. A lot of sunlight can't get in there and cause the algae to photosynthesize. So that's one thing you could think about. Humic acid is another thing that people will add to their water. You just need a very small amount. It colors the water, won't harm your fish. It just stops the algae from being able to photosynthesize. Now, a couple of methods I've used before to control algae in an aquaculture system, actually still relevant to aquaponics, is mechanical filtration. I used filter socks. I found they did a fairly good job for the first hour. Then they started to decrease their efficiency, mainly because the socks get filled up with the algae itself. They ended up overflowing. So I went a little bit nuclear, and I ended up getting a UV filter, and I placed that just before the fish tank. Now, in the aquaculture, that's no problem because I'm not really wasn't really worried about locking out any elements. UV light can totally lock out iron from the water column, and it can also affect boron and manganese, basically dropping the amount that is available to the plant. So it's not something you really want running full time in an aquaponic system, but if you're just trying to treat an algal outbreak, they can be something that can be very beneficial. What I would do is place it directly before the fish tank though, the water going into the fish tank getting treated, mainly because it will also kill off your beneficial bacteria as well as the algae and cause the nutrient lockout. So if it's just before the fish tank, the water goes through, loads up with ammonia again, and then can go through to the biofilters, which are either your grow beds or your standalone biofilter, and then it can feed your plants on through there. So that is what I used when I had real pea soupy green algae water in the aquaculture system. Not really a problem I've had in aquaponics, and I figure that's because we've got the plants in there using the majority of the nitrogen and also the phosphorus as the plants feed. So I hope those little pointers on the algae help you folks out. Just a quick heads up for you folks who may be new to aquaponics, or maybe this is the first time you've seen it and would like to know more. I do have a backyard aquaponics beginner's guide available. It is an online guide, $19.95 US, and it covers everything from what is aquaponics all the way through to how to start your own system, including how to build a small one using recycled components and some basic plumbing bits and pieces, and then it carries on into managing the system, how to look after your plants, suggestions for plants when you first start off, and that sort of thing. So do check it out. There is a link down below. So that's enough of me spruiking my wares. Now back to the consultation. Straight up, they have a few issues with water, so they will be buying that new pump today. Originally they had a 10,000 litre running both of these, but I have suggested they go to a slightly larger, possibly an 18 to 20,000 litre an hour pump. The reason being is, even though these are only 2,000 litre an hour tanks, theoretically only need to be swapped over probably 6 to 8,000 litres in an hour. There is a lot of other pipe work involved, which creates friction with the water from its source in the sump tank, which I'll show you down the bottom, delivering it up here. So you do lose a lot of flow rate, and that is why I always recommend oversizing your water pump. So that's something Niki is going to get onto. Now the fish themselves, we have silver perch in here. When we came down the first time, they were all up at the surface, all looking happy and healthy and all wanting some feed. But we've been standing over the tank now for quite some time and they're a little bit shy. We did notice one of the fish coming up has a couple of white spots on its head. I dare say it has ich, and Niki has told me that she has lost a number of fish over the last couple of weeks in particular. And I dare say that is a combination of dropping water temperatures, these being silver perch. I had the same problem with mine. Every now and then she'll come out and there'll be 2 or 3 floating in the tank. So it's something she's well aware that needs to be fixed, so she's going to get on top of. So just quickly, we will run through how you can treat fish for ich in your aquaponic system. The best way is to try and speed up their life cycle if you can. So that means bringing the water temperature up to around about 27, 28 degrees Celsius, which is around 80 degrees Fahrenheit from memory. And that speeds up their life cycle, brings it down to a matter of days rather than possibly over a week. And because we're heating up the water, it is a good idea to make sure you have ample oxygen flowing into the system, which is what we've done here. We've added in an extra air line, as well as added on one of the Venturis that I sell, just to add as much oxygen into the water as we can, because warm water doesn't hold dissolved oxygen as well as cool water. The next thing I've done is salted the system to 4 parts per thousand. So for us people using metric, that's very easy. It's 4 kilogram salt per 1,000 litres of tank system water. And the salt that I use is just everyday common pool salt. It's a dried sea salt. I weigh that out dissolve it in some water first and then pour it in the system. Now what that does is it doesn't affect the ick on the fish itself because it's protected by the slime coat, but once it breaks off to reproduce, it is vulnerable because they're basically encapsulated in a little sac, and that sac dries out due to the high salt content of the water, and you can kill off the ick infestation. So because you may have ick in different stages of its life form on the fish itself, it pays to run the high salt level for a week or two just to make sure you can knock them all out of the system, knock them off, and then you can slowly reduce your salt levels again. Just another thing to keep in mind is if you don't have ick in your system and you are adding new fish into your system, there is a chance there that you may be introducing it on contaminated fish, either you bought in an aquarium or from a hatchery. Most hatcheries are disease-free though, if they want to stay in business. So it does pay to give them a bit of a quarantine time in a system that is highly salted, just to make sure that you can break that life cycle of the ick if there is any on them. Now unfortunately we don't have a test kit on hand today to measure the ammonia, nitrite and nitrate, but having the salt put into the system, there won't be an issue with nitrite. Obviously if there wasn't a nitrite issue at the moment, the fish would all be dead. So the salt that is going to be medicating the system will look after that. There could be a few issues with ammonia, but I dare say that would only be because the water hasn't been exchanged until later on today because the pump died down in the sump. So that is something that they will have to get on top of. Luckily, as I said, being winter, water temperature is down, so the ammonia is in the form of ammonium, which isn't as toxic to the fish, needs to be in far higher numbers to be an issue with the fish than ammonia. So I'm not too concerned about their health in that respect, as long as the pump gets popped back on there later on today. As for the system itself, it's fairly well set up. The bed surface area wise, would say they're roughly around about 2.5 meters each. So we have about 7.5 square meters of grow space here, and they're all about a foot deep with the media. So yeah, we're looking at a fair number of fish that these beds here can look after. But in saying that, I do think that 2,000 litre fish tanks is a little bit too much. So what I've suggested they do is mothball one, keep this one going, and also add in a radial flow settler just to this little area here next to the fish tank to keep it out of the way, so they can collect the solids that come out of the fish tank and capture them before they go back into the sump tank to be picked up and then spread around the system. So a little 200 litre drum is something that Niki's going to knock up and put there, a little radial flow settler. I'm going to give her links to the videos and all that, so help her out there. The water does come down through this master drain down into the sump tank, and this is also where all the drains from all the grow beds are going as well, down into that master drain, down into the sump tank. And just out the end of here we have the sump tank, which is where the pump is situated. You can see the hose there, a little extender that goes down to it. So that was driving the water all the way from down here, all the way up, a slight gentle slope into the fish tank. And you can see that another issue I've suggested they fix is covering this section of the sump tank, because I dare say that is where a lot of the UV light is coming in and creating that algal load in the system. But as a bare bones basic system with the sump tank down here using gravity and these grow beds, I think it has potential to be a really good little system. Niki's experimented with a few different growing techniques. She had drippers down into the tomato there through summer. She's got a number of different plants in here, the gerbers, strawberries, tomatoes, and unfortunately, depending on how much salt goes in, these little guys here might be a victim. But yeah, just the basic backbones is really good, and Niki's really confident that she can get on top of all this and yeah, get it all sorted out. Yeah, with the main recommendations being the removal of this tank here at the moment and the creation of the radial flow settler. So as for stocking density on these beds, I'm saying roughly around about 70 fish, 70 to 80 fish max with that amount of biofiltration, which you could have in a single 2,000 litre tank. Fix up a few other issues, like as you can see there is water pooling on the surface here, and you can see some of the green algae on the rocks over there. So the easy fix on that is just to either add more rocks over the top of the standpipe here, so you have dry medium on top, or chop off a little bit of that standpipe and take it down. So I'm not too sure what their fix is going to be with that yet, but it would be easy just to chop some standpipe off. But in saying that, if you add more media, you end up with more biofiltration as well. So that's another way to look at it. So that is something, one of the issues they have had, as you can see down here. There's a little bit of pooling. And lots of baby tomatoes. Another issue Niki said she has had is just all these joins in this 100mm pipe or 4-inch pipe has caused a few leaks over the last 12 months, so they have had to chase a few of them down, but it's something they're going to fix. I actually recommended popping a 90mm stormwater down there, mainly because it's a lot cheaper. The fittings are cheaper, and she has said that she wanted to replace this anyway to deal with all these joins and leaks and everything. So that's another thing that they'll probably end up doing. So there you go, folks. Hope you enjoyed that little bit of a behind the scenes look at what happens on a consultation. Obviously, I impart a lot more knowledge than what you've seen in this video. Niki had a load of questions and I went through them all, did up a little bit of a report and then sent that through a couple of days later once I got home. As it happens, I stopped off at another place on the way home to see Maddie and her family. They've actually got a bit of a unique case. They purchased a property with 2 hydroponic pineapple grow units in it. So she wanted to know if they could be converted into aquaponics, and also a rough idea on how I would set up another aquaponics system on their existing lot. And yeah, again, a little bit of a report was done up and I sent that through for her. So that's the sort of thing I like to do with these consultations, deal with the immediate questions, give them a couple of suggestions, and when the consultation's done, that's not it. I'm still available via email if there are further questions down the line, and I also give folks access to our supporters group for 6 months as well. So that's the sort of thing I do with the consultations, either live or online via Zoom. So there you go, folks. I will leave it there. I do hope you're all well and happy in your own gardens, aquaponics and farms are booming, and we will catch you, maybe Bianca and I, next week. Cheers, folks. Have a top one.